The first thing I felt was the cold dirt against my cheek and the high, keening wail of a woman I did not recognize. My head pounded with a pain so deep it felt like my skull was splitting, and the world was a blur of brown and gray. I tried to move, and my body felt like a sack of wet sand, heavy and unresponsive. I blinked, trying to focus. The ceiling above me was low, made of rough-hewn wooden beams darkened by centuries of smoke. The air was thick with the smell of unwashed wool, old sweat, and the bitter tang of medicinal herbs. This was not my apartment. This was not my city. This was not my life. A shadow fell over me. A woman's face, lined and weathered, appeared above me. Her eyes were dark and hard, and they held no warmth. She stared at me as if I were a piece of rotting meat. The wailing stopped. She leaned closer, her breath sour and stale. You're awake. I opened my mouth to speak, but only a dry, croaking sound came out. My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. I tried to remember. I had been in my apartment. The rent was due. I had been working 2 jobs, trying to pay for my mother's medical bills. She had called me, screaming, accusing me of being a worthless, ungrateful son who never did enough. I had hung up. I had felt the familiar, crushing weight of exhaustion. I had lain down on my couch, and I had not woken up. Until now, I was not in my apartment. I was in a hut, a mud-walled, dirt-floored hut. The woman was still staring at me. Her name came to me from somewhere deep in the recesses of my new, fractured mind.
Li Hua.
Mother, did you hear me, boy? She snapped. I said, you're awake. Get up. The sun has been up for 2 hours. The animals need feeding. The field needs tending. Do you think you can lie there all day like a prince? I tried to sit up and the room swam. I was not just exhausted. I was weak. The body I was in was thin and frail, the body of a boy who had been starved and overworked. A boy who had fallen into a river and almost drowned. A boy who had been beaten and berated until his spirit was broken. I knew his name was An. I knew his life had been a misery. I knew his family despised him. Did you hear me? Li Hua's voice rose to a shriek. She reached down and grabbed my arm, her fingers like claws. She yanked, trying to pull me off the bed. Get up, you lazy, useless thing. I didn't move. I had been dead. I had been so tired, so soul-crushingly tired. I had worked myself into the grave trying to please people who could never be pleased. I had given everything I had, and they had taken it and demanded more. I had nothing left. And now I was in a new life, and the same story was being written. The same dynamic. The same expectation. The same demand that I break my back for people who would never be grateful. Let go of me, I said. The voice that came out of my mouth was weak and raspy, but the intent behind it was sharp. It was the voice of a man who had been pushed to the edge and had finally stopped caring. Li Hua froze. Her grip loosened slightly. She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. The boy she knew, the boy, and would never have spoken to her like that. He would have flinched. He would have apologized. He would have scrambled to his feet, terrified of her rage. Let go of me, I said again, louder this time. My voice was gaining strength. I looked her dead in the eye, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. She was used to fear. She was used to obedience. She was not used to defiance. Her face contorted with fury. The shock wore off quickly, replaced by a hot, ugly rage. She raised her hand to strike me. If you hit me, I said, my voice flat and cold, I will walk out that door. I will go to the village magistrate. I will tell him about the stolen grain you have hidden in the back shed. I will tell him about the taxes you never paid. I will tell him everything. Her hand froze in midair. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The stolen grain. The unpaid taxes. I had no idea where these words came from. It was a bluff. A total, reckless bluff. But the expression on her face told me I had hit a nerve. You wouldn't, she whispered. Her voice was shaking. The fury was still there, but it was now mixed with fear. She was afraid of me. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. My head was pounding, and my legs felt like they were made of jelly. I forced myself to stand. I was taller than she was. I looked down at her. I wouldn't, I said. Try me. You think I care about this life? You think I care about you? You have given me nothing but pain. You have worked me until my bones ache. You have starved me. You have beaten me. You have done everything but kill me. And you failed. I am still here. And I am done being your slave. She took a step back. Her hand dropped to her side. The room was silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A girl, perhaps 16 or 17, was standing in the doorway. She had wide, frightened eyes and a thin, pale face. Lynn, my sister. She was clutching a bundle of rags to her chest, her knuckles white. What's going on? Lynn whispered. Her voice was trembling. Mother, what's happening? Shut up, Li Hua snapped, turning on the girl. Get out. This is none of your business. Lynn flinched but didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on me. There was a question in them. Who are you? What have you become? I took a step forward. My body was swaying, but I forced myself to stay upright. Lynn. Go to the field. Tell father I'm coming. Tell him we have work to do. She hesitated. She looked from me to our mother, her face a mask of confusion. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. The brother she knew was gentle and timid, a boy who could barely look anyone in the eye. The boy who had fallen into the river and nearly died. This was not him. This was a stranger wearing his face. Go, I said. My voice was harsh, but not unkind. It was the voice of someone who was in control. Lynn turned and fled. I could hear her footsteps pounding against the hard-packed earth outside. Li Hua was still staring at me. Her hatred was palpable, a physical presence in the room. You're not my son, she hissed. You're a demon. A demon has taken my son's body. Maybe, I said. But I'm the demon who's going to keep this family from starving to death this winter. I'm the demon who's going to keep Lu Zheng from taking Lin as his third wife. I'm the demon who's going to make sure that every single person in this village who has wronged us pays for it. She recoiled. The name Lu Zheng sent a visible tremor through her. He was the village landlord, a cruel, ruthless man who held debts over everyone's heads. He had been pressuring Li Hua to sell Lin to him for months. She had been considering it. The money would be enough to pay off the debts and buy the winter grain. She had been ready to sell her own daughter to an old man just to survive. You can't stop him, she spat. He's too powerful. He'll crush you. Then let him try, I said. I've been crushed before. I've been ground down until there was nothing left. I've died. I know what it's like to have nothing. I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of anyone. I walked past her out the door. The sunlight was blinding. The yard was a mess of mud and dying chickens. The field beyond was brown and barren. The mountains in the distance were a cold, unforgiving wall. This was my new world. A world of poverty, cruelty, and desperation that I stumbled across the yard toward the field. My legs were weak, but I kept moving. I found the man I knew was my father. He was a broken, hollow-eyed man, his shoulders stooped, his hands calloused. He looked up at me as I approached, his eyes dull and lifeless. He said. His voice was a whisper, barely audible. You should be resting. I've rested enough, I said. We have work to do. I picked up a hoe. It was heavy, and my arms screamed in protest. But I didn't stop. I walked into the field and started to dig. The earth was hard and unyielding. It was the same as it had always been. But this time, I was different and I was not the same and who had fallen into the river. I was someone else. Someone who had learned that kindness was a weakness, that hope was a delusion, and that the only way to survive was to be harder, colder, and more ruthless than the people who wanted to destroy you. I dug the earth and thought about the dead boy whose body I now inhabited. He had been kind. He had been gentle. He had been good. And they had destroyed him. They had broken him down until there was nothing left. I would not make the same mistake. I would not be soft. I would not be generous. I would be the weapon they had forged me into. I would be the revenge of the dead boy. Li Hua appeared at the edge of the field. She was carrying a basket of dirty clothes. She was glaring at me, her face twisted with hatred. She opened her mouth, ready to launch another tirade. I looked up at her. My gaze was cold, flat, and empty. I didn't speak. I just stared at her. She stared back. And then, without a word, she turned and walked away. It was the first victory. Small, insignificant, but real. I had won the first battle. I had forced her to back down, that I looked out at the barren field. I looked at the skeletal trees and the gray sky. I knew what was coming. Winter. The lean, hungry season when people died in the dirt. Lu Zheng, the powerful landlord who had come to collect his debts. But I was not afraid. I had been reborn. I had been given a second chance. And I would not waste it. I would fight. I would scheme. I would claw my way out of this misery. I would not stop until I had burned every single person who had ever hurt me or the dead boy I had replaced. I looked down at my hands. They were young hands, but they were already calloused. I looked at the hoe in my grip. I felt the weight of it, the promise of labor and blood, that I was in now. But I was more than un. I was the revenge of a life unlived. And I would make them all pay. The wind started to blow. It was cold and sharp, a harbinger of the winter to come. I shivered, but I didn't stop digging. The work was my only anchor. That evening I sat in the dark with Lin. We were alone. My father was at the tavern. My mother was in her corner, brooding. Lin was sewing a torn shirt. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Brother," she whispered. "What happened to you in the river? You almost died. And now you're different. You scare me." I looked at her. She was just a girl. A scared, helpless girl who had been raised to be prey. I felt a flicker of the old compassion, the dying ember of the man I had been. But I stamped it out. Compassion was weakness. I could not afford to be weak. "Don't be scared of me, Lin," I said. "I'm not your enemy. I'm the only one who's going to save you. You understand, I'm going to make sure Lu Zheng never touches you. I'm going to make sure we survive the winter. And I'm going to make sure that Li Huan never raises a hand to you again." She stared at me, her eyes wide. She didn't believe me. How could she? I was just a boy. A sick, weak boy who had been a punching bag for his entire life. But I would make her believe. I would make them all believe. I thought about the wheat fields. They were dying. The soil was tired, depleted by years of poor farming. I knew, from a different life, about crop rotation, about fertilizers, about techniques that could coax life from the dead earth. I knew about commerce, about leverage, about how to turn a small advantage into a mighty power. The knowledge was there, a treasury of information from a world that was now ashes. Tomorrow, I would start. I would plant the seeds of my revenge. The soil was not the only thing that needed renewal. My family needed to be broken and rebuilt. The village needed to be purged of its corruption. Lu Zheng and his ilk needed to be ground into the dust. I lay down on my hard bed and stared at the ceiling. I felt the presence of the dead boy. His ghost was still here, a whisper of grief and fear. I made a silent vow to him. I would not let his suffering be in vain. I would take his life, and I would turn it into a weapon. The door creaked open. Li Hua stood there, a silhouette against the darkness. She didn't speak. She just stared at me. The hatred was still there. But I sensed something else, too. A grudging respect. She had been afraid of me today. And fear, I knew, was the first step to respect. "Go to sleep," she said finally. Her voice was gruff. "Tomorrow you will work." She closed the door. The room fell into silence. I closed my eyes. The cold was seeping through the walls. The winter was coming. The battle was just beginning. But for the first time in 2 lives, I was ready to fight. I was ready to win. The first thing I registered was the smell of blood and the sound of a woman screaming. Not a scream of pain. A scream of rage. The words were sharp, cutting through the fog in my head like a blade. "You useless, worthless boy. You've killed it. You've killed the only thing we had." I opened my eyes. The world swam into focus. I was lying on a dirt floor, my cheek pressed against the cold, hard earth. The ceiling above me was made of dark, smoke-blackened beams. A small clay lamp flickered in the corner, casting long, dancing shadows. I tried to move, and pain shot through my ribs. I felt like I had been run over by a cart. A shadow fell over me. A woman's face loomed into view. She was in her 40s, her face gaunt and lined with bitterness. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes were dark pools of fury. She was holding a dead chicken by its legs. Its neck was broken, its body limp. "You were supposed to feed it," she shrieked. "You were supposed to take care of it. And now it's dead."
Dead.
"And you just lay there like a sack of grain." I blinked. The memory was there, a jumble of sensations. A river, cold water, panic, a desperate struggle. I had been trying to save a goat. The goat had been swept away. I had almost drowned. I had been pulled out by a villager, half dead. That was all I could remember. The rest was a blank. A void. I looked at the woman. I knew her. Her name was Li Hua. She was my mother. In this life. The dead chicken in her hand was the last one. The only one that had survived the winter sickness. And now it was dead. "Get up," she screamed. She dropped the chicken and grabbed my arm. Her fingers were like claws, digging into my flesh. She yanked, trying to haul me to my feet. "You will go to the fields. You will work. You will make up for what you've done." I didn't move. I couldn't. The weakness was overwhelming. My body was a stranger, thin and frail and utterly exhausted. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and only a rasping sound came out. A young girl appeared in the doorway. She was small and thin, with a face that was too pale and eyes that were too big. Lynn, my sister. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity. "Mother, please. He's still sick." The apothecary said he needed rest. "Rest?" Li Hua whirled on her. "Rest? We have no grain. We have no money. We have no chickens. And you want him to rest? He'll rest when he's dead. And at this rate, that won't be long."
She shoved me.
I fell back against the bed frame, the rough wood digging into my spine. I gasped. The pain in my ribs flared. I said, "Get up," she roared. Something inside me snapped. It was not a snap of anger. It was a snap of clarity. A cold, clear moment of absolute certainty. I was not going to be this. I was not going to be a punching bag. I was not going to be a slave. I had been dead. I knew what it was like to be nothing, and I refused to go back to that. I looked up at Li Hua. My gaze was steady. My voice, when it came out, was low and quiet.
"No."
She froze. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. She stared at me, her mouth open. She was not used to defiance. The boy she knew, the boy in, would never have said no. He would have cowered. He would have apologized. He would have scrambled to his feet and begged for forgiveness. "What did you say to me?" she whispered. "I said no," I repeated. My voice was gaining strength. "I'm not going to the fields. I'm not going to work. I'm going to rest. And you are going to leave me alone." The color drained from her face. Her eyes widened. She looked at me as if she were seeing a ghost, which, in a way, she was. The boy she knew was dead. He had drowned in that river. What was left was something else. Something harder. Something colder. "Do you dare speak to me that way?" she stammered. Her fury was warring with her shock. She didn't know how to handle this. The script had been flipped, and I slowly pushed myself up. My body screamed in protest, but I forced myself to sit upright. My head was spinning, but I focused on her face. "You want to know what happened to me in that river?" I asked. "I died. I drowned. And then I came back. But I'm not the same person who fell in. That boy is gone.
He's dead.
And I'm not going to let you do to me what you did to him." She took a step back. Her hand flew to her mouth.
"Demon," she hissed.
"You're a demon. You're not my son." "Maybe not," I said. "But I'm the one who's going to keep this family alive. I'm the one who's going to make sure we don't starve this winter. I'm the one who's going to make sure that Lu Zheng doesn't take Lin as his wife. And if you try to stop me, if you try to hurt me, I will burn this house down around you." It was a bluff. I had no idea who Lu Zheng was. The name had just come to me, pulled from the depths of the boy's fractured memories. But the reaction it provoked told me everything I needed to know. Li Hua's face went white. She looked at me with naked terror. Lu Zheng, she repeated, her voice shaking. You know about him. I know he wants Lin, I said. I was guessing now, but it was a calculated guess. I know you've been thinking about selling her to him. I know you've been desperate for the money. And I know that you're terrified of him. But I'm telling you now, you're not going to do it. You're not going to sell my sister. She's not your sister, Li Hua spat. She's my daughter. She belongs to me.
She's a person, I said. She's not a chicken. She's not a cow.
She's a human being. And you will not sell her. The fury returned to Li Hua's eyes. She lunged at me, her hands raised, ready to strike. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just stared at her.
And she stopped.
She stopped inches away from me, her hands trembling in the air. Hit me, I said. Hit me and I will walk out that door. I will go to the village elder. I will go to the magistrate. I will tell them everything. I will tell them about the grain you've been hiding. I will tell them about the debts you owe. I will tell them about Lu Zheng. And I will make sure they know that you killed your own son. Her hands dropped to her sides. She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving. The hatred was still there, burning in her eyes. But there was fear, too. A deep, abiding fear. She didn't know what I was capable of. She didn't know the lengths I would go to. You're a monster, she whispered. Maybe, I said. But I'm the monster who's going to save this family. I turned away from her. I looked at Lin, who was still standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and her hands shaking. She had been crying. Tears were still tracking down her cheeks. But there was something else in her expression now. Something that looked like hope. Lin, I said. Come here. She hesitated. Then she walked over to me. I took her hand. It was cold and fragile. Listen to me, I said. You are not going to be sold. You are not going to be married off to some old man. You are going to be free. I promise you. I will die before I let that happen. Her lips trembled. And she whispered, What happened to you in the river? The river gave me a second chance, I said. And I'm not going to waste it. I released her hand and stood up. The room spun around me, but I forced myself to stay upright. I walked past Li Hua out the door. The sunlight hit me like a physical blow. The yard was small and cluttered. The fields beyond were brown and dead. The chickens were all gone. The goat was gone. The water bucket was empty. But I was alive. I was alive, and I had been given a gift. A second life. A second chance. And I was not going to waste it. I walked to the well and pulled up a bucket of water. The water was cold and clear. I drank deeply. The cold liquid revived me. My head cleared. My thoughts sharpened. I looked at the fields again. I knew, from a life that was no longer mine, that the soil was tired. It had been planted with the same crop year after year, draining the nutrients. I knew that if I planted it right, if I rotated the crops, if I used the right techniques, I could coax a harvest out of it. I knew about seeds and fertilization. I knew about irrigation. I knew about the value of information. And I knew about Lu Zheng. The name was a source of fear in the village. He was a landlord who had a monopoly on the land. He had lent money to the farmers, charging exorbitant interest. When they couldn't pay, he took their fields. He took their homes. He took their daughters. He was a parasite and he was killing the village, but parasites could be killed. They just needed the right poison. I turned back to the house. Li Hua was standing in the doorway, watching me. Her face was a mask of hatred and suspicion. Lin was behind her, peeking out.
Father, I said.
I didn't know where the word came from. It just surfaced. Where is father? He's at the tavern, Li Hua said. The contempt was dripping from her voice. Where else would he be drinking away the little money we have? He's a useless, spineless fool. Bring him home, I said. I need to talk to him. Why, she asked. What do you want with him? I want to talk to him about Lu Zheng, I said. I want to talk to him about the fields. I want to talk to him about the winter.
I want to save this family.
And I need him to help me. You think he'll help? Li Hua laughed. It was an ugly, bitter sound. He can't help himself. He's a broken man. He's been broken for years. He'll never stand up to Lu Zheng. He doesn't have to stand up to him, I said. He just has to stand with me. And if he won't do that, I'll do it alone.
I ser det her.
The defiance in my gaze was absolute. She was the first to look away. Fine, she muttered. I'll send for him. But if this goes wrong, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to protect you. You'll be on your own. That's the way it's always been, I said. That's the way it's always going to be. She turned and walked away.
What's its hegel?
The wind was starting to pick up. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of rain. The winter was coming, and we were not readied, but I would make us ready. I would work the fields. I would gather resources. I would make alliances. I would forge a weapon out of this broken village. And I would use that weapon to destroy Luzheng. That the sun was setting. The sky was turning orange and red. The fields were darkening. I heard the creak of the door behind me. Lin had come out to stand beside me. And she said, "Are you really going to do it? Are you really going to fight Luzheng?" "Yes," I said. "I'm going to fight him. I'm going to fight all of them. Everyone who has hurt this family. Everyone who has hurt this village. I'm going to burn them all down." She was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and took my hand. Her grip was small and cold, but it was steady. "Then I'll fight with you," she said. "I'm not going to let you do it alone." I looked at her. In the dying light, her face was filled with a fierce, stubborn resolve. She was afraid. I could see it in her eyes. But she was standing with me anyway. "Good," I said. "Together, we're going to win." And in that moment, I meant it. I was not just a boy who had been given a second chance. I was the architect of my own destiny. And I would build a new world out of the ruins of this one. The day after the confrontation, I woke before dawn. The house was cold, the embers in the hearth long dead. I could hear the wind howling through the cracks in the walls. Lin was curled up in the corner, still asleep. Li Hua's bed was empty. She had probably gone to the village to spread more poison about me, to paint me as a demon-possessed madman. I didn't care. Let her talk. Words were just wind. Actions were what mattered. I dressed in the dark. The clothes were rough and patched, barely enough to keep out the cold. I found a worn coat hanging by the door and threw it over my shoulders. The pockets were empty. The house was stripped of anything of value. No money, no food, no tools beyond the bare essentials. The dead boy had been a walking disaster, a drain on resources. That was how they had seen him. That was how they saw me. I walked out into the yard. The frost was thick on the ground, crunching under my feet. The sky was a pale, gray dome, the stars just beginning to fade. The air was sharp and clean, burning my lungs with every breath. I looked at the field. The soil was hard, frozen solid in places. It was impossible to plant anything now. The ground needed to be turned, broken up, aerated. It was a job for a plow and an ox. We had neither. I walked to the storage shed. It was a small, cramped structure made of rotted wood. I pushed open the door and peered inside. The smell hit me first. The smell of old grain, of mildew, of rat droppings. The place was a disaster. Sacks were torn, their contents spilling onto the floor. The few tools that were there were rusted and broken. It was a museum of neglect that I started to clean. I pulled out the torn sacks, piling them in the yard. I swept the floor, gathering years of debris and filth. I found a stash of old grain hidden in a corner, buried under a pile of rags. It was moldy, but it was still something. I set it aside. I found a clay pot that had been sealed with wax. Inside was a handful of copper coins, the boys' secret savings. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I was still working when Lin appeared. She had wrapped herself in a thin blanket, her face pale and sleep-lined. She stood in the doorway, watching me. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was small and uncertain. "Cleaning," I said. "Organizing. We need to know what we have. We need to know what we can use." She stepped inside. She looked at the piles of debris, at the neat stacks of salvaged grain. She looked at me. "You've changed," she said. "You're not the same person you were before the river." "I'm not," I said. "The person I was before the river is gone. He died in that water. I'm someone else now." She was silent for a long moment. Then she knelt down beside me and started to help. She picked up a torn sack and began to mend it. Her hands were small, but they were quick and efficient. "Who are you?" she asked. "If you're not my brother, then who are you?" I looked at her. The question was a knife, sharp and probing. I could lie. I could tell her I was still in, that the fever had changed me. But that would be a betrayal. She deserved the truth. Or, at least a version of it. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to be used," I said. "Someone who knows what it's like to be thrown away. Someone who's not going to let that happen again. Not to me. And not to you." She looked at me. Her eyes were searching, trying to find the boy she knew. She wouldn't find him. He was gone. But I saw something else in her expression. A flicker of recognition. She understood what I was saying. She had been used and thrown away too. She knew the feeling. "Mother is going to try to stop you," she said. "She's going to the village elder. She's telling everyone that you're a demon, that you're possessed." "Let her," I said. "The village elder is a coward. He won't do anything. He's afraid of Lu Zheng. He's afraid of anyone who might disrupt the peace. The villagers are the same. They've been beaten down for so long. They don't know how to fight back." "Then how will you convince them?" she asked. "I won't try to convince them," I said. "I'll show them. I'll show them that it's possible to fight back. That it's possible to win. That's the only way." She nodded slowly. She didn't fully understand. She couldn't. She was just a girl, raised in a world of fear and submission. But she was willing to learn. That was all I could ask for. We worked in silence for the rest of the morning. We sorted through the rubble of the shed, salvaging what we could. By the time the sun was high, we had a small pile of grain, a few usable tools, and a plan. The first step was to find allies. I knew the village was full of people who had been wronged by Lu Zheng, the widow whose son had been beaten, the farmer whose field had been stolen, the young couple who had been forced to sell their daughter. They were all suffering in silence. They just needed someone to show them the way. I left Lin in the yard and walked into the village. The streets were quiet. The villagers were wary, their eyes darting away when I looked at them. The word had spread. I was a demon, a madman, a danger to the community. The whispers followed me. I found the widow's house. It was a small, ramshackle hut on the edge of the village. The roof was caved in. The walls were sagging. I knocked on the door. A woman opened it. She was old, her face lined with grief, her eyes hollow. She looked at me with suspicion. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to talk to you about Lu Zheng," I said. "I want to talk about what he did to your son." Her face twisted with pain. "My son is dead. What is there to talk about? I'm going to make him pay," I said. "I'm going to make all of them pay. But I need your help." She stared at me. Her eyes were searching, trying to find the lie. But there was no lie in my voice. Just the cold, hard truth. "You're just a boy," she said. "What can you do?" "I can burn it all down," I said. "I can burn them all down. But I can't do it alone." The old woman was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. "We have much to discuss." I spent the day talking to the villagers. One by one, I visited the people who had been wronged. The farmer, the young couple, the old man whose land had been taken. The list of grievances was long and bitter. The weight of Lu Zheng's crimes was heavy, pressing down on the village like a yoke. But the people were scared. They had been beaten down so many times, they had forgotten how to fight. They had forgotten that they had teeth. "He's too powerful," the farmer said. His face was weathered and lined, his hands thick with calluses. "He has the magistrate in his pocket. He has men with swords." "What can we do against that information?" I said. "Leverage. The magistrate doesn't know everything. Lu Zheng is a smuggler. He deals in salt. He sells it at inflated prices. The magistrate would string him up if he knew." The farmer's eyes widened. "You know about the salt." "I know a lot of things," I said. "And I'm going to use that knowledge to bring him down." The rumor spread. I knew the village was full of Lu Zheng spies. I knew the word would reach the landlord's ears. That was part of the plan. I wanted to provoke him, to force him into a confrontation. The more desperate he was, the more mistakes he would make. That evening I returned home. The house was dark, the air heavy with tension. Lin was sitting by the hearth, her face pale. Li Hua was standing in the corner, her arms crossed, her eyes blazing. "Your little rebellion is over," she said. Her voice was cold and triumphant. "Lu Zheng's men are coming. They're going to arrest you. They're going to beat you. And then they're going to take Lin." I looked at her. The hatred in her eyes was absolute. She had sold me out. She had been the one who told Lu Zheng about my plans. She had been the one who had set this in motion. "Where are they?" I asked. "They'll be here by nightfall," she said. "You should run. You should hide. Maybe you can survive. But they'll take Lin anyway. And it will be your fault." "No," I said. "They're not going to take anyone. They're not going to arrest anyone. They're going to walk into the village square, and they're going to find that they have no power. The people are ready. The people are waiting." Liwalauga. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You think a few desperate peasants can stand up to Lu Zheng? You're a fool. You're a dead fool. And I'll be glad to see you go." Lin stood up. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "I'm going with him," she said. "Whatever happens, I'm going with him." Li Hua turned on her. "You stupid girl. You'll be killed. Or worse. What are you thinking?" Lin looked at me. Her eyes were bright with fear, but there was a fierce determination there. "I'm thinking that he's the only one who ever tried to save me. I'm thinking that he's the only one who ever treated me like a person. And I'm not going to abandon him." Li Hua's face contorted with fury. She lunged at Lin, her hand raised. I stepped between them. I caught her wrist, my grip like iron. She froze, her eyes wide with shock. "Don't touch her," I said. "Don't ever touch her again." The strength was gone from her. She tried to pull away, but I didn't let go. I held her gaze, staring into her eyes. I could see the hatred. I could see the fear. I could see the terrible, empty truth. She had nothing left but spite. "Let go of me," she whispered. "Let me go." "Go to your room," I said. "Stay there. Don't come out until it's over. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." She stared at me. She was trembling. The defiance was fading, replaced by something else. Submission. She was finally broken as she pulled her hand free and stumbled away. I watched her disappear into the shadows. The house was silent except for the sound of Lin's ragged breathing, and Lin said, "What are we going to do?" I looked out the window. The sun was setting. The sky was red, the color of blood. I could hear the sound of horses in the distance. They were coming. Lu Zheng's men were coming. "Get your coat," I said. "We're going to the village square. We're going to face them. And we're going to win." The village square was empty when we arrived. The dust from the road settled around our feet. The torches along the edges of the square were unlit, leaving the space in a deepening twilight. The only sound was the wind and the distant thud of horse hooves growing closer. I could feel Lin trembling beside me. Her hand was wrapped around my arm, her grip so tight it hurt. "They're not coming," she whispered. "They're not coming, are they?" "They're coming," I said. "I can hear them." The hoofbeats grew louder, more distinct. I could see the torches now, a line of orange light winding down the road from the Lu estate. There were at least a dozen riders, maybe more. They were moving fast, their horses lathered, and snorting. Lin made a small, frightened sound. I looked at her. Her face was pale in the fading light, her eyes wide with terror. She was only a girl, a child. She had no business being here, but she had chosen to come. She had chosen to stand by me. That meant everything. "Stay behind me," I said. "No matter what happens, stay behind me." She nodded. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't run. She stayed. The riders reached the edge of the square. They reined in their horses, forming a semicircle around us. The leader was a large man with a shaved head and a scar running down his cheek. He was wearing leather armor and carrying a heavy club. He dismounted and walked toward us, his boots crunching on the hard-packed earth. "You're the one," he said. His voice was a low growl. "The one who's been stirring up trouble. The demon boy." "I'm not a demon," I said. "I'm just someone who's tired of being pushed around." The man laughed. It was an ugly, mocking sound. "Tired of being pushed around, you're a peasant. A worm. You have no power. No rights. You're nothing. I'm nothing, I agreed. But I'm nothing with a very long memory. And I remember everything Lu Zheng has done. I remember the taxes he stole. I remember the land he took. I remember the people he's hurt. And I'm going to make sure everyone else remembers too. The man's smile faded. He took another step closer. You talk big for a dead man, he said. But talk is cheap. The master wants the girl. He wants you beaten and broken. He wants to make an example out of you. He gestured to his men. 2 of them dismounted and started to approach Lin. She shrank back, her face white. I stepped in front of her, blocking their path. You're not taking her, I said. You're not touching her. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. You're going to stop us with what? I didn't answer. I just stood there. The 2 men hesitated, looking at their leader. He made an impatient gesture. What are you waiting for? Get the girl. One of the men lunged at me. I saw it coming. The movement was slow, almost lazy. He was expecting me to cower. He was expecting me to run. He was not expecting me to fight. I stepped to the side and drove my knee into his stomach. The breath exploded out of him, and he doubled over. The other man stared at me, his eyes wide. He reached for the knife at his belt, but I was already moving. I slammed my fist into his throat. He dropped the knife and fell to his knees, gasping. The scarred man's face contorted with rage. You little bastard. You're going to pay for that. He raised his club and swung at my head. I ducked, the weapon whistling past my ear. I had no weapon. I had no training. I was just a boy in a borrowed body, fighting for his life. But I had something they didn't have. I had nothing to lose. I drove my shoulder into his chest. He was bigger than me, heavier, but I had momentum. He stumbled back, off balance. I followed him, pressing my advantage. I hit him again and again, my fists landing on his face, his ribs, his throat. He was trying to bring his club up, trying to get it between us, but I was too close. I was too fast. Finally, he swung his arm and caught me in the side. The blow was like being kicked by a horse. I flew sideways, crashing into the ground. The world spun. I tasted blood in my mouth. I tried to get up, but my legs wouldn't obey. And Lin was screaming. And the scarred man was on his feet. He was bleeding from his nose and mouth. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He raised his club, ready to bring it down on my head, but then he stopped. He stared at something behind me. I turned my head. The villagers were coming. They had gathered at the edge of the square, their faces lit by the dim light of the torches. They were not armed with swords or clubs. They had pitchforks and hoes and axes. They were not soldiers. They were farmers. But there were dozens of them, and they were moving forward. The scarred man's eyes darted around. He saw the crowd. He saw the weapons. He saw the faces of his own men, who were suddenly looking very uncertain. He was a bully. He was used to dealing with fear. He was not used to facing defiance. Get back, he shouted at the villagers. This is none of your concern. We are the ones who made it our concern, a voice said. It was the old woman, the widow. She was standing in the front of the crowd, her face hard and unyielding. You come to our village. You threaten our children. You steal our land. And you think we will just stand by. This is a rebellion, the scarred man snarled. This is treason. The magistrate will hear of this. He will have you all hanged. The magistrate, the widow said. The magistrate who takes your bribes. The magistrate who does your bidding. We know about the salt. We know about the taxes. We know everything. The scarred man's face went pale. He looked at me. I was on the ground, but I was looking up at him. I was smiling. It was a cold, hard smile. Everything, I said. I told him everything. About the smuggling. About the tax money. About the beatings. About the dead. The scarred man took a step back. His men were gathering around him, their faces uneasy. They were not prepared for this. They had come to terrorize a few peasants, not to face an entire village. Leave now, I said. Leave, and we won't tell the magistrate. Leave, and we won't tell the city. But if you stay, if you try to hurt anyone, We will make sure that Lu Zheng's name is never spoken again, without being followed by the word traitor. The scarred man stared at me. His eyes were burning with hatred. But there was fear, too. I could see it. He had miscalculated. They all had. Get the horses, he said finally. His voice was tight, barely controlled. We're leaving. His men scrambled to their mounts. They were eager to go. They didn't look back. The scarred man was the last to mount. He sat on his horse, looking down at me. This isn't over, he said. The master will not forget this. He will not forgive. You have made a powerful enemy today, boy. Good, I said. I'm tired of making friends. He turned his horse and galloped away. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the night. The villagers watched them go, their faces a mix of shock and triumph. And then the silence broke. The cheering started. It was a raw, ragged sound, full of years of suppressed rage and desperation. They had won. They had stood up to Lu Zheng, and they had won. Lin ran to me. She knelt down beside me, her hands on my face. She said. Are you all right? You're bleeding. I'm fine, I said. I've been worse. I pushed myself up. My ribs ached. My head was pounding. But I was alive. We were all alive. The villagers crowded around me. They were clapping me on the back, shaking my hand. The old widow was crying. She took my face in her hands and kissed my forehead. You did it, she said. You did what none of us could. We did it, I said. All of us. Together. It was a moment of triumph. A small victory, but a real one. The fear was breaking. The old patterns of submission were cracking. The village was starting to wake up. But I knew it was not over. The scarred man was right. Lu Zheng would not forget. He would not forgive. He would come back, and he would bring more men. He would bring the magistrate. He would try to crush us, but we would be ready. We would use the time we had bought to prepare. We would gather allies. We would spread the story. We would turn the entire region against him. I looked up at the sky. The stars were coming out bright and cold. The winter was coming. The hunger was coming. But we had taken the first step. We had proven that the system could be fought. Lin was still holding my hand. Her face was streaked with tears, but she was smiling. You did it, she whispered. You really did it. We're not finished yet, I said. This is just the beginning. I know, she said. But for the first time, I feel like we might win. I looked at her. I thought about the boy who had drowned. I thought about the life I had left behind. I thought about all the people who had been crushed by this world. And I made a vow. I would not stop. I would not rest. I would keep fighting until the last vestige of Lu Zheng's power was broken. I would build something new out of the ashes. A world where people like us could live without fear. That the crowd was still cheering. The torches were being lit. The village square was filled with light and sound. It was the sound of hope. And I let it wash over me. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. The morning after the standoff, I woke to the smell of porridge. It was a thin, watery porridge made from the moldy grain we had salvaged from the shed, but it was hot, and it was food. Lin had made it. She was sitting by the hearth, stirring the pot with a wooden ladle. Her face was still pale, her eyes still shadowed with exhaustion, but there was a new light in them, a flicker of something that looked like hope. I sat up slowly. My ribs were bruised, my knuckles were raw, and my head was pounding. But I was alive. We were all alive. That was more than I had expected. Eat, Lin said. She handed me a bowl. The porridge was thin and bland, but it was warm. I drank it down in a few gulps. It was not enough. It was never enough. But it would have to do. Where's Mother? I asked. She left at dawn, Lin said. She went to the village. I think she's trying to spread more rumors about you. She's still angry. She still wants to get rid of you. Let her, I said. The villagers have seen the truth. They saw us stand up to Lu Zheng's men. They saw us win. Rumors won't change that. Lin nodded. She didn't look convinced. She was still afraid of our mother. She had good reason to be. Li Hua was a venomous woman, and she had been spitting poison for years. I finished my porridge and stood up. My body protested, but I forced myself to move. There was work to do. We had won a small victory, but the war was far from over. Lu Zheng was still out there, nursing his wounded pride, planning his revenge. He would come back, and he would come back stronger. I walked out into the yard. The frost was thick on the ground. The sky was a pale gray dome. The winter was getting closer. We needed to prepare. We needed to gather food, firewood, and allies. We needed to build a coalition that could stand against Lu Zheng. The first person I visited was the widow.
Her name was Old Ma.
She was the one who had spoken up in the square, the one who had rallied the villagers. She was a tough old woman, her body bent by years of labor, her face etched with grief. But there was steel in her bones. She said when she saw me, "You look like you've been dragged through a hedge backwards." "I've been worse," I said. "I need your help." She nodded. "I thought you might."
Come in.
I stepped into her hut. It was small and bare, with little more than a bed and a hearth. But it was clean and well kept. Old Ma had been a widow for a decade. Her son had been beaten to death by Lu Zheng's men for a debt he couldn't pay. She had been surviving on her own ever since. "I need to know who we can trust," I said. "I need to know who in the village is willing to fight, who is willing to stand against Lu Zheng." Old Ma nodded slowly. "There are many who are willing," she said. "But there are also many who are afraid. Lu Zheng has a long reach. He has spies everywhere. He knows who speaks out." "I'm going to change that," I said. "I'm going to make sure that Lu Zheng is too busy protecting himself to bother with us. But I need people I can count on. I need people who are willing to take risks." She was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to a small chest in the corner. She opened it and pulled out a leather pouch. It was heavy. She handed it to me. "Old Ling," she said. "The farmer. He's been planning to leave the village for years. His son was crippled by Lu Zheng's men. He has nothing left to lose." "Old Ling," I repeated. "The one who lost his field." "The same," she said. "He's been waiting for someone to give him a reason to fight. I think you're that reason." I took the pouch. It was full of copper coins. A small fortune by the standards of the village. "What is this?" "My savings," Old Ma said. "I was going to use it to buy my way out of this place. But I've decided to stay. I'm going to fight. And I want you to have this. Use it to buy supplies. Use it to buy allies. Use it to burn this place to the ground if you have to." I looked at the pouch. It was a gesture of trust, of hope. It was more than just money. It was a symbol, a sign that the tide was turning. "Thank you," I said. "I won't waste it." I spent the rest of the day visiting the villagers. One by one, I spoke to them. I listened to their stories. I learned their grievances. I showed them that I was not just a boy with a big mouth. I was someone who could get things done. That Old Ling, the farmer, was a tall, gaunt man with a haunted look in his eyes. His son was crippled, unable to work. His field had been taken by Lu Zheng. He had been living on charity for years. "You want to fight," he said. His voice was flat. "You want to fight Lu Zheng. Do you know what you're getting into?" "I know exactly what I'm getting into," I said. "I'm getting into a fight against a man who has everything. Money, power, connections. I'm getting into a fight that could get me killed." "And you still want to do it?" "Yes," I said. "Because I've been dead before. And I'd rather die fighting than live on my knees." He stared at me. Then he laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound. "You're a strange boy, and you sound like you're 100 years old." "Maybe I am," I said. "Maybe I've been around long enough to know that the only way to win is to fight." He nodded slowly. "I'll fight with you," he said. "But my son will stay out of it. I won't put him in danger." "Deal," I said. By the end of the day, I had gathered a small group of allies. Old Ma, Old Ling, the young couple whose daughter had been sold, the farmer whose land had been stolen. They were all desperate. They were all angry. And they were all ready to fight. That evening, I gathered them in the shed behind my house. The space was small and cramped, lit by a single sputtering lamp. The faces around me were grim, set with determination. "We have 2 weeks," I said. 2 weeks before Lu Zheng makes his move. He's going to try to crush us. He's going to bring more men. He's going to bring the magistrate. He's going to try to make an example of us. So what do we do? Old Ling asked. We spread the word, I said. We tell everyone what Lu Zheng has done. The salt smuggling, the tax theft, the beatings, the murder. We don't keep it in the village. We send it to the next village.
And the next.
And the one after that. And the magistrate. Old Ma asked. What about him? He's in Lu Zheng's pocket.
For now, I said.
But magistrates change. And a magistrate who's seen to be corrupt is a magistrate who gets replaced. If we can create enough pressure, if we can make Lu Zheng a liability, the magistrate will turn on him. The group was silent. They were thinking, processing. The plan was ambitious. It was dangerous. It was the only plan we had. How do we do it? The young woman asked. Her name was Mei. Her daughter had been taken by Lu Zheng. She was consumed by grief and anger. We start small, I said. We talk to our neighbors. We talk to our families. We spread the story one person at a time. And we keep our mouths shut about what we're planning. Lu Zheng has spies everywhere. We can't let him know what we're doing. We can do that, Old Ling said. We've been keeping our mouths shut for years. It's all we know how to do. I looked around the room. These people were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were just ordinary people, beaten down by years of oppression. But they had something Lu Zheng didn't have. They had a cause. They had hope. And they had me. The meeting broke up. The villagers filtered out into the night, their footsteps quiet on the hard earth. I stayed in the shed, sitting in the dark, thinking. The cold was seeping through the walls. The winter was getting closer. We were running out of time. I had done what I could. I had gathered allies. I had made a plan. Now I had to wait. Wait for the pieces to fall into place. Wait for Lu Zheng to make his move. But waiting was not my strong suit. I was a man of action. I needed to do something. I needed to strike first. The thought came to me unbidden. A risky move. A dangerous move. But it was the move that could change everything. I rose from my seat and stepped out of the shed. The night was cold and clear. The stars were out, bright and cold. I walked to the edge of the village, where the road led toward the Lu estate. It was dark, silent. No sign of movement. I turned and walked back toward the house. Lin was waiting for me by the door. Her face was pale in the moonlight, and she said, "What are you thinking? You have a look in your eyes. That dangerous look." "I'm thinking about the salt," I said. "I'm thinking about the evidence." "What evidence?" "There's a ledger," I said. "A record of Lu Zheng's dealings. If I can get my hands on it, I can ruin him. I can end this before it even begins." Lin's eyes widened. "You're going to break into his house? That's suicide." "Maybe," I said. "But suicide is better than waiting to be killed." I stepped past her and disappeared into the darkness. I heard her call after me, but I didn't look back. I had a plan. A dangerous plan. But it was a plan. And I was ready to execute it. The Lu estate sat on a low hill at the edge of the valley, a sprawling compound of high walls and tiled roofs that dominated the landscape. It was a fortress, built to intimidate, built to remind everyone who lived in its shadow exactly who was in charge. I had seen it from a distance many times. This was the first time I was approaching it with the intention of breaking in. I moved through the darkness like a ghost, keeping to the treeline, my footsteps silent on the frozen ground. The moon was hidden behind a thick bank of clouds, which was good. The darkness was my ally. The cold was my enemy. My thin coat was no match for the winter wind, and my fingers were already numb. But I kept moving. The wall around the estate was high, at least 10 feet, made of packed earth and stone. It was topped with broken pottery, a crude but effective deterrent. I circled the compound, looking for a weakness. There was a gate at the front, guarded by 2 men. They were huddled around a small fire, their attention focused on staying warm. They were not expecting anyone to try to break in. Why would they? Everyone in the village was terrified of Lu Zheng. I found what I was looking for at the back of the compound. A tree, an old gnarled oak, grew close to the wall. Its branches reached out, almost touching the top. I climbed it, my hands and feet finding purchase on the rough bark. The branches were slick with frost, but I held on. I reached the top of the wall and pulled myself up, careful not to touch the broken pottery. I dropped down on the other side, landing in a crouch. The compound was quiet. The main house was dark, except for a single window on the second floor where a lamp flickered. That would be Lu Zheng's study. That was where I needed to go. The ledger was there. I knew it. It had to be. I moved across the courtyard, keeping to the shadows. The compound was sprawling, a maze of buildings and pathways. I found a side door to the main house. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and slipped inside. The interior was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the lamp from the study above. I moved through the rooms, my heart pounding. The house was filled with the scent of old wood and incense. It was opulent, filled with fine furniture and silk curtains. Everything Lu Zheng had stolen from the village. Everything he had taken from people like Old Ma and Old Ling. I found the stairs and climbed them. They creaked under my weight and I froze, listening. No sound.
No alarm.
I continued upward, but the study door was ajar. I pushed it open and slipped inside. It was a large room, lined with bookshelves. A massive desk sat in the center, cluttered with papers. The lamp on the desk was low, casting long shadows. I moved to the desk and began to search. The papers were a mess. Contracts, debt notes, letters. I flipped through them, looking for the ledger. My hands were trembling, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I was running out of time. I could feel it. And then I heard it. A sound from downstairs. Footsteps. Heavy and slow. Someone was coming. I froze. My mind raced. I looked around the room. There was nowhere to hide. The footsteps were getting closer. They were coming up the stairs. I grabbed a scroll from the desk, a sheaf of papers, anything that might be useful, and stuffed them into my coat. The footsteps were outside the door. I moved to the window. It was closed. I tried to open it, but it was stuck. The footsteps stopped. The door handle turned. I threw myself behind a heavy curtain, pressing myself against the wall. The door opened. Someone stepped into the room. I held my breath. It was Lu Zheng. He was an old man, his hair white, his face lined and cruel. He was wearing a silk robe, his feet bare. He walked to the desk and sat down, his movements slow and deliberate. He started to read, his eyes scanning the papers. I was trapped and I stayed behind the curtain, barely breathing. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. He muttered something under his breath, a curse I couldn't quite catch. He was angry. He was probably still fuming about the confrontation in the village square. He sat there for what felt like an eternity, reading and muttering. I was frozen, my muscles cramping, my legs trembling. I had to get out. I had to find a way out. Finally, he stood up and walked to the window. He opened it, letting in a blast of cold air. I shivered, but I forced myself to stay still. He stood there for a long moment, looking out at the darkness. Fools, he muttered. The whole village is full of fools. I'll crush them. I'll crush them all. He turned and walked back to the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at the room. I thought he was going to come back, but he just shook his head and left. The door closed behind him. The footsteps faded down the stairs. I waited for a long moment, listening. Then I stepped out from behind the curtain. My legs were weak, my hands shaking. I moved to the window and climbed out onto the roof. The cold air hit me like a physical blow. I forced myself to move, to find a way down, and I found a drain pipe and shimmied down it, my hands raw and bleeding. I dropped to the ground and ran, not stopping until I was well clear of the estate. I collapsed in a grove of trees, gasping for breath. I had done it. I had gotten in. I had gotten out. And I had the evidence. I lay on the cold ground for a long time, staring up at the sky. The clouds were breaking, revealing the stars. I had never felt so alive, so focused, so determined. That the next morning, I spread the papers on the table in our hut. Lin was beside me, her eyes wide. Old Ma and Old Ling were there too, their faces grim. This is it, I said. This is the proof. Here are the records of the salt smuggling. Here are the debt notes. Here are the letters from the magistrate. Everything. Does it prove he's a traitor? Old Ling asked. Does it prove he stole the tax money? This is just the start, I said. I didn't get everything, but I got enough. Enough to start the fire. Old Ma nodded slowly. What do you need us to do? I need you to make copies, I said. As many as you can. I need you to spread them. I need everyone to see what Lu Zheng has done. I need to make sure that the magistrate can't just sweep this under the rug. We can do that, Old Ma said. We'll start today. I looked at the papers. They were like a bomb, a weapon that could bring down the entire Lu Empire.
But I knew that this was just one step.
Lu Zheng was still powerful. He would not go down quietly. That afternoon, word arrived that Lu Zheng's men were gathering again. They were not coming to the village this time. They were going to the county seat. They were going to the magistrate. He's going to try to get ahead of the story, I said. He's going to try to frame us. He's going to try to make us look like rebels. Then we need to get to the magistrate first, Old Ling said. We need to tell him the truth. I nodded. I'll go. I'll take the evidence. I'll make our case. Lin stepped forward. I'm coming with you. No, I said. It's too dangerous. Then I'll be in danger, she said. I'm not staying here while you risk everything. I looked at her. Her face was set with determination. She was not going to back down. Fine, I said. We'll go together. We left that night. The journey to the county seat was 2 days on foot. The road was cold and dark. The wind howled. We were pursued by shadows, the fear of Lu Zheng's men always at our backs. But we made it. We reached the county seat at dawn. The magistrate's residence was a large compound at the center of the town. We were ushered inside, our faces haggard, our clothes torn. The magistrate was a fat man with a soft, doughy face. He looked at us with suspicion. You are the ones from the village, he said. You are the ones who have been causing trouble. We're not the ones causing trouble, I said. We're the ones who have been wronged. I laid the papers on his desk. He stared at them, his eyes widening. He read them, his face turning pale. Then he looked up at me, his eyes cold. This is a serious accusation, he said. Do you have proof? It's all there, I said. The salt, the taxes, the beatings,
the bribes,
everything. He was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a cold, cruel smile. Very clever, boy. Very clever. But you have made a mistake. You see, Lu Zheng and I are partners. I've known about the salt for years. I've been taking a cut. And now you come here with your evidence, and you expect me to turn on my own partner. My heart sank. The color drained from my face. I had been outmaneuvered. The magistrate was not the ally I had hoped he would be. He was part of the problem. Take them, the magistrate said, gesturing to his guards. Lock them up. We'll deal with them later. The guards grabbed us. Lin screamed, but I didn't fight. I couldn't. I had been completely outmaneuvered. As they dragged us away, I looked back at the magistrate. He was laughing. He was laughing at us. At our foolishness. At our hope that I was led to a cell, the door clanging shut behind me. The darkness pressed in. I had failed. I had led Lin into a trap. I had thrown away everything we had built. I sat down on the cold stone floor, my head in my hands. I had been so sure, so arrogant, so certain that I could win. And I had been wrong. But I was not done yet. I refused to be done. I would find a way out. I would find a way to fight back. The keys, the guards, the corrupt magistrate, I would find a way to turn it all against him. I just had to survive the night. The cell was cold and damp, the walls slick with moisture. I sat in the corner, my back against the rough stone, staring at the door. The only light came from a small, barred window high on the wall. It was just enough to see the shape of Lin, huddled in the opposite corner. She was crying, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Lin, I said. My voice was low, barely a whisper. Stop crying. She looked up. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. We're going to die in here, she said. They're going to kill us. No, I said. They're not going to kill us. They're going to keep us here. Use us as leverage. They're going to try to force the villagers to back down. But we're not going to let that happen.
How? She asked.
How are you going to stop them? We're locked in a cell. No one knows we're here. Old Ma knows, I said. Old Ling knows. They'll figure it out. They'll find a way to help us. She shook her head. I don't believe you. I don't believe anyone is coming. I got to my feet. My legs were stiff, my body aching from the journey and the cold. I walked to the door and peered through the small grate. The corridor was dark and empty. I could hear the distant sounds of the compound, footsteps and muffled voices. We're not going to wait for someone to rescue us, I said. We're going to find a way out. How? She repeated. There's no way out.
Think, I said.
There's always a way out. We just have to find it. I started to examine the cell. The walls were stone, thick and solid. The door was made of heavy iron. The lock was old, rusty. I pulled at the bars, but they were set deep into the stone. No give. No weakness. But there was the window. It was small, just a slit in the wall, too high to reach. But it was open. I could feel the cold air seeping through. Lin, I said. How tall are you? She looked at me confused. I don't know. Tall enough, I suppose. Stand against the wall. Here. I positioned her beneath the window. I'm going to climb on your shoulders. She didn't question me. She just did it. She braced herself against the wall, and I climbed up. My weight was too much for her. She staggered, but she held steady. I reached the window and grabbed the edge. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through. But it was possible to hold on, I said. Don't let go. I pulled myself up. The stone scraped against my chest, tearing my coat. I forced my shoulders through, twisting and wriggling. The cold air hit me like a slap. I was outside. I was on the roof. I turned back to the window. Lin, I said. I'm going to pull you up. Take my hand. She reached up, her fingers grasping for mine. I caught her wrist and pulled. She was light, but the angle was awkward. I strained, my muscles screaming. She slipped once, twice. But then she was through, scrambling onto the roof beside me. We lay there for a moment, gasping for breath. The night was cold and clear. The stars were out, bright and cold. We were free. For the moment. Now what? Lin whispered. Now we find the magistrate, I said. We find his study. We find his evidence. His evidence, she asked. He's corrupt. He's working with Lu Zheng. What evidence could he have? Evidence of his corruption, I said. Evidence of the bribes. The payments. The deals. If we can find that, we can use it against him. We can turn the tables. We moved across the roof, keeping low. The compound was large, a maze of buildings and courtyards. I had to find the magistrate's private quarters. That was where he would keep his secrets. That we found a window that was unlocked. I slid it open and dropped inside. The room was dark. A study, full of scrolls and papers. I moved to the desk and started to search. What are we looking for? Lin asked. A ledger, I said. A list of payments. Anything that connects him to Lu Zheng. She started to search too. Her hands were trembling, but she was quick. We rifled through the papers, looking for anything that might be useful. And then I found it. A leather-bound book, hidden in a drawer under a false bottom. I opened it. It was a record. A complete record of every bribe the magistrate had taken. Every payment from Lu Zheng. Every deal they had made. This is it, I said. This is everything. We need to leave, Lin said. We need to get out of here. We turned to leave, but the door opened. The magistrate stood there, his face white with shock. He was not expecting to see us. He was not expecting to see anyone. Guards, he screamed. Guards. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the throat. He was a fat, soft man. He had no strength. I slammed him against the wall. His eyes bulged. Listen to me, I said, my voice a cold whisper. I have your ledger. I have everything. If you don't call off your guards, I'll make sure everyone sees it. The regional governor. The emperor's inspectors. Everyone. You wouldn't, he gasped. You're a peasant. No one will believe you. I have the proof, I said. I have the records. I have your signature. I have everything. I will burn it all down. Your reputation, your life, everything. He struggled, but I held him fast. I could feel his pulse beating against my hand. He was terrified. Call off your guards, I said again. And we'll talk. We'll make a deal. He nodded frantically. I released him. He staggered back, gasping for breath. Guards, he shouted again, but this time it was different. Stand down. Let them go. The guards in the corridor stopped. They looked at him, confused. Let them go, he repeated. They're free to leave. I kept the ledger. I kept it in my hand, a talisman of victory. I walked out of the room, Lynn beside me. We passed the guards, who didn't try to stop us. We walked out of the compound into the cold night air. I can't believe that worked, Lynn whispered. I can't believe it. Believe it, I said. We're not done yet. I turned back to look at the compound. The magistrate was standing in the doorway, his face pale, his hands trembling. He had lost. He knew he had lost. We walked back to the village. The journey was long and cold, but we made it. We reached the edge of the village at dawn. Old Ma was waiting for us. She was standing at the gate, her face etched with worry. When she saw us, she rushed forward. And, Lynn, she embraced us, tears streaming down her face. I thought you were dead. I thought you were gone forever. We're fine, I said. We have something. Something that will change everything. I held up the ledger. Old Ma stared at it, her eyes wide. What is that? The magistrate's corruption, I said. The proof that he's been working with Lu Zheng. The proof that he's been stealing from the village. She reached out and touched the ledger, her fingers trembling. This will destroy them. That's the idea, I said. We gathered the villagers in the square. The sun was rising, casting a golden light over the crowd. I stood on a wooden platform and held up the ledger. People of the village, I said. I have proof. Proof that the magistrate is corrupt. Proof that Lu Zheng is a criminal. Proof that we have been cheated and robbed and beaten for years. The crowd murmured. They were excited, hopeful, but also afraid. The fear was still there, a residue of years of oppression. With this proof, we can go to the regional governor, I said. We can demand justice. We can demand that Lu Zheng be punished. We can demand that the magistrate be removed. Someone in the crowd shouted, and if they don't listen, what then? Then we keep fighting, I said. We keep spreading the word. We keep building our strength. We make ourselves impossible to ignore. We make ourselves impossible to crush. The crowd cheered. It was a ragged, desperate sound. But it was the sound of hope. It was the sound of change. That night, I sat alone in the shed. The ledger was in front of me, a weapon of immense power. I had won a battle, but the war was still going on. I looked at the pages, at the names and numbers. I thought about Lu Zheng. I thought about the magistrate. I thought about the system that had created them, that had enabled them to crush the village for so long. That I was not just fighting against two men. I was fighting against a system of corruption and injustice that had been in place for generations. But I had the weapon. I had the proof. And I was going to use it. Lynn came in. She was carrying a cup of hot tea. She sat down beside me. You look tired, she said. I am tired, I said. But I can't stop. Not yet. You don't have to do this alone, she said. We're with you. All of us. I looked at her. She was not the same girl who had been cowering in the corner of the cell.
She had changed.
She had grown. She had become stronger. Thank you, I said. She nodded. We're family, she said. We stick together. I smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that mattered. Something that would outlast the hatred. Something that would last. The next morning, I would leave for the regional governor's palace. I would take the ledger. I would make our case. I would fight for justice, but tonight I rested. I sat with my sister and drank hot tea. And I thought about the future. A future that was not defined by fear and oppression. A future that was filled with hope. The regional governor's palace was a sprawling complex of red walls and golden roofs, a monument to the power of the empire. I stood at the gate, the ledger clutched in my hands, my heart pounding. Lynn was beside me, her face pale but determined. We had traveled for 3 days, sleeping in ditches and eating whatever we could scavenge. We were dirty, exhausted, and hungry. But we were not broken. The guards at the gate eyed us with suspicion. "State your business," one of them said. His voice was flat, dismissive. We were peasants. We were nothing. "I need to see the governor," I said. "I have evidence of corruption. Evidence of crimes committed by the magistrate and a local landlord. I have proof." The guard laughed. "You have proof you're a beggar. You have nothing." "I have this," I said, holding up the ledger. "This is a record of every bribe the magistrate has taken. Every payment from Lu Zheng. Every deal they made. It's all here." The guard's eyes widened. He looked at the ledger, then at me. "Wait here," he said. He disappeared inside. We waited. The minutes stretched into hours. The sun climbed higher, beating down on us. I could feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down on my shoulders. But I didn't move. I didn't let go of the ledger. Finally, the guard returned. "The governor will see you," he said. "Follow me." We were led through a maze of corridors and courtyards. The palace was a world of luxury, a stark contrast to the poverty of the village. We were brought to a large hall, where a man sat on a raised dais. He was in his 50s, with a stern face and sharp eyes. This was Governor Zhang. He looked at us, his expression unreadable. "You are the ones who have come with evidence of corruption." "Yes, Your Excellency," I said. I bowed. The ledger held out in front of me. "This is the proof. The magistrate has been taking bribes from Lu Zheng. They have been stealing from the village for years. They have beaten and killed innocent people. They have sold children into slavery." Governor Zhang took the ledger. He opened it and began to read. His face remained expressionless, but I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten. He read for a long time, turning page after page. The silence in the hall was absolute. Finally, he closed the ledger and looked at me. "This is a serious accusation," he said. "If it is false, you will be punished severely." "It is not false," I said. "Every word is true. I have witnesses. The villagers will testify." He nodded slowly. "And what do you want? What is your demand?" "I want justice," I said. "I want Lu Zheng to be punished. I want the magistrate to be removed. I want the village to be free from their oppression." Governor Zhang was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up. "I will investigate these claims," he said. "If they are true, there will be consequences. But you must understand, Lu Zheng is a powerful man. He has connections. He has allies. This will not be easy." "I know," I said. "But I don't care. I will fight. I will not stop until justice is done." He looked at me, a glint of something in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. Or curiosity. "You are a strange young man," he said. "You speak like a seasoned official. Where did you learn to speak like that?" "I learned from watching," I said. "From watching the powerful crush the weak. From watching the system fail the people it was supposed to protect. I learned that the only way to win is to fight." He nodded slowly. "We will see," he said. "Return to your village. I will send my investigators. We will get to the bottom of this." We left the palace. The journey back to the village was long, but it was different this time. There was hope in our steps. We had planted a seed. Now we just had to wait for it to grow. 2 weeks passed. The village was tense, waiting. The investigators came. They questioned the villagers. They looked at the evidence. They dug into Lu Zheng's dealings. The old man was getting nervous. His men were seen less and less in the village. The fear was starting to lift. And then one morning, word came. Lu Zheng had been arrested. His estate had been seized. The magistrate had been removed from his post. The empire had spoken. Justice had been done. The village erupted in celebration. It was a wild, joyful release of years of pent-up rage and fear. People were crying, laughing, hugging each other. The old wounds were still there, but they were starting to heal. I stood at the edge of the square, watching the celebration. Lynn was beside me, her hand in mine. She was crying, tears of joy streaming down her face, We did it, she said. We actually did it.
We did, I said.
But this is just the beginning. The system is still broken. There are other villages, other landlords, other corrupt officials. This was just one battle. She looked at me, her eyes shining. But we won. That's what matters. We won. I nodded. She was right. We had won. For now, that was enough. Old Ma approached me. She was beaming, her face transformed by joy.
She said.
You did it. You saved us all.
I didn't do it alone, I said.
We did it together. All of us. She embraced me.
What are you going to do now? She asked.
You have the whole world ahead of you. I looked out at the village. The people were dancing, singing, celebrating. They were free. For the first time in years, they were free. First, I'm going to eat, I said. Then, I'm going to rest. And then, I'm going to start planning. There are other battles to fight. Other people to save. She laughed. You never stop, do you? No, I said. I don't. That evening, I sat on the roof of our hut, looking out at the stars. The winter was still coming. The hunger was still a threat. But we had something we didn't have before. Hope. And with hope, anything was possible. Lynn joined me. She was carrying a cup of tea. She handed it to me. What are you thinking about? She asked. I'm thinking about the future, I said. I'm thinking about what comes next. What has come next? She asked, and I looked at the stars. They were cold and distant, but they were beautiful. I think I'm going to leave, I said. I think I'm going to travel. I'm going to see the world. I'm going to help other villages, other people. I'm going to fight injustice wherever I find it. She was silent for a long moment. When are you leaving? Soon, I said. But not yet. I'm going to stay for the winter. I'm going to help the village get ready. And then, when spring comes, I'll go. She nodded. I'll come with you, she said. No, I said. You need to stay. You need to help rebuild the village. You're the one who knows how to lead. You're the one who can keep everyone together. But I want to be with you, she said. You're my brother. You're all I have. I looked at her. She had grown so much in the past months. She was no longer the scared, timid girl I had first met. She was strong, brave, and capable. Lynn, I said. You don't need me. You've become strong on your own. You can do this. I know you can. She was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'll stay, she said. But you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll come back, she said. Promise me you'll come home. I reached out and took her hand. I promise, I said. I will always come back. We sat there for a long time, watching the stars, listening to the sounds of the village below. The wind was cold, but we were warm. We were together. And that was all that mattered. The next day, I started to work. I helped the villagers prepare for the winter. We repaired the roofs. We stocked the granaries. We built new storage sheds. The old patterns of fear and oppression were gone. In their place was a new spirit of cooperation and hope. The winter came, cold and hard. But we were ready. The village survived. The people survived. They had been through so much, but they were still standing. They were still fighting. And they were winning. In the spring, I left. I packed a small bag and walked out of the village. Lynn was waiting for me at the gate. Old Ma was there. Old Ling was there. The whole village had come to see me off. Be safe, Lynn said. Come back to us. I will, I said. I promise. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I knew I would see them again. I knew I would return. The road stretched out before me. The world was vast, full of injustice and suffering. But I was not afraid. I had been given a second chance. I had been given a purpose. And I would not waste it. I walked. The sun was rising. The world was waking up. The wind was in my face. And I was alive. I was alive. I thought about the dead boy, the boy I had replaced. I thought about his life, his suffering, his death. I would carry him with me. I would carry all of them with me. The widows, the orphans, the beaten and the broken. I would carry them with me wherever I went. And I would fight. I would fight until the last injustice was righted. I would fight until the last oppressor was brought down. I would fight until the very end. Because that was what I was. A fighter. A survivor. A ghost made flesh. And I would never stop.